Cool. So we're back here at the studio.
Yeah.
How are you doing, Peter?
Pretty good, pretty good. So yeah, trying to get stuff done as usual.
Well, sounds perfect. And I think our listeners and the audience know pretty well who you are, but what are you doing today? What is happening in your life?
Today, actually I got back from Lappeenranta last night, I was home before, actually after midnight. So I had a good day in Lappeenranta, so we're doing a lot of pretty cool stuff there. So it's kind of like the heart of South Karelia. It's right next to the Russian border, and it's also home of LUT, so basically the technology university of Lappeenranta, and there's a lot of startup activity, lots of companies that have come out of what they've kind of like invented and created at the university. So for example, we're of course saving the planet. So Ari, a guy who started many of the companies in Lappeenranta, he's built this off-store thing. So basically it's this solar cooker technology with connectivity and a lot of stuff. It's super cool. So basically removing the need to cut down the forests, just to basically get wood to cook the food. So it's actually a super efficient way to fight climate change, and much more efficient than planting trees. Of course, we also need to plant trees, but it's also important that we eliminate the need to cut down those trees. So I think that's again for this carbon compensation and all of that. These solar cookers are a very cool idea. And actually then, Ari has also been involved with many of the other inventions coming out of the Lappeenranta innovation ecosystem. So there's a lot of companies and a lot of super cool stuff. Making protein out of thin air, so the solar food stuff, that's actually also Lappeenranta originated, or then making energy out of air and stuff like that. So there's a lot of really cool things. And then another thing that actually visited the guys at Mevea. They do these super cool simulators of harbors and mines and all the different kind of equipment, all these cranes and mining equipment and all of that. So you can actually, everybody's now talking about these digital twins. So they have digital twins for all these machines and things that you have in the harbors, in the mines and all of that, and you can simulate those. But also, of course, when you have perfect simulation, you can also train people using the simulators. So those machines can cost tens of millions, but then you can build a simulator or a digital twin for some 100K or a few 100K. So of course it makes a lot of sense to buy the simulators and then train the people using those in the harbors, in the mines. And of course it's also much cheaper to make the mistakes if you're for example, lifting some containers. It's a lot cheaper to drop the virtual container and make mistakes using the virtual container than real ones. So it saves money and actually lives. So those guys are also in Lappeenranta, and anyway, so a good day in there. Also my friend Max, he's originally from Chile, and him and his Russian girlfriend Paulina. Actually, Paulina is now a Finn, so she just got her citizenship. So that was a good reason to celebrate. But Max is making military-grade e-bikes in Lappeenranta, and been kind of working with Max and the team on how to kind of then make that happen at scale, and there's some super interesting stuff. So yeah, that was yesterday, and today I got back here, and now we're working on education and the talent side of things, which I've been working on, I don't know, tens of years maybe, and some discussions about how we can scale that. And then super happy to hear now that our Uzbek high school students, so they are actually arriving in Finland today. So all 8 of the first batch of high school students, they have now learned the Finnish language in Uzbekistan, in Sarashan, so a small city, home of the biggest gold mine on the planet, just a detail. But anyway, but there's gold in the ground, but there's talent on top of that. So that's of course much more valuable than any gold in the world. And now we have 8 young people from Uzbekistan. They have learned Finnish language in 6 months. And of course, I mean, that's, no big deal because everybody knows that Finnish is one of the easiest languages to learn. So we got actually great feedback from these are 15, 16, 17-year-old kids. And they said that it's fantastic that this is so much easier to learn than English. So they now speak Finnish, and they are now going to start high school in places like Taavetti, Savitaipale, Rantasalmi, Mänttä, to name a few. So we have 380 fantastic high schools here in Finland, and we have 176 of them have less than 150 students. And these smaller high schools, we're running actually at half the capacity. So every year in this high school and vocational, there are more than 20,000 starting seats that are not filled. So we have a massive number of seats available at our schools, and basically we can share our educational expertise with the world. And what we're working on now is attracting then young people. They can come here, do their high school in Finnish language, and after that they can continue into university, into working life here in Finland, where we have a massive talent shortage. And actually it's not just Finland, it's the whole finest Bay Area, so Finland, Estonia, Sweden, all of Nordic countries. So it's something that is I think very important for us to do. So I'm very focused on basically increasing the talent pool, increasing the talent density. And I always use the example of the importance of talent density, that we have probably the most successful games ecosystem anywhere on the planet here in Finland. We have about 4,000 people now working in games. So it's not just game developers and designers and all that, but it's like the whole ecosystem. Everything you need to make a successful game you can find here. 4,000 people, small area, and we're in the next 12 months probably adding 1,500 people to the games industry.
Cool.
And those 1,500 new people, the talent that is being added to the games companies here in Finland, for the most part, they are coming from outside the finest Bay Area. So they're coming here from the US, from the UK, from Brazil, Iran, Vietnam, China. So it's really like from all over the planet. And because of this, and we have this fantastic gravity when it comes to games, that if you want to create the next Angry Birds or the next Clash of Clans or you name it, then you need to be here. This is where you will find the talent. And of course, what we need to make sure that we keep it that way. So we need to attract more talent, and then we need to attract talent, not just people who are already fantastic at making games, but we also want to build this long term. So more high school students, more university students from all over the planet come to our fantastic high schools, our fantastic universities. And then after that, we can offer fantastic jobs, and we can offer, of course, a happy life in the happiest nation on the planet. So that's kind of like the plan.
Yeah. Well,
so that's short intro to
I was just going to say
last
that
2 days. Yeah.
A lot of stuff happening, and it's always so inspiring, Peter, with you and looking at what has happened the last week. And there's hundreds of different kind of things. And if someone knows what is happening here in the Finnish or Nordic ecosystem, I think it's you. Why are you running around all of these cities, and what kind of has led you to be kind of like where the innovations happen and seeing all of these different innovations?
I think that I've been doing this probably you could say since forever, but all the way back in 1999 we started this HP Bazaar program. So I was working at HP, and HP, of course, everybody knows, huge company, but that's also happens to be I would say the original tech startup, if you will, because Bill and Dave, they started that company in 1939 in their garage in Palo Alto in California. And I always encourage people that, hey, if you have your way, and of course now once we get through the pandemic and all that, then we can actually travel and go there. But if you are away to Silicon Valley, you should go to Palo Alto, and you should go and check out that garage, because it's a very, very modest garage. It's not, nothing special, but of course what makes it special is that that's the birthplace of Silicon Valley. It's the first historical landmark of Silicon Valley. And I think that it's again a good reminder that big things start small. So very kind of modest beginnings, and then Bill and Dave, so Bill Hewlett, Dave Packard, they started HP, but they also started the whole Silicon Valley, and really fantastic entrepreneurs. And I think that when I met with them when they were still around, I mean, you could immediately tell that, the passion, the drive, really amazing entrepreneurs. And I think that it's kind of a very good kind of source of inspiration if you look at what's been going on in Silicon Valley. And then of course now everybody knows, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, Uber, you name it, all of these fantastic success stories coming out of Silicon Valley. So there's a long history, but it's always good to keep in mind that Silicon Valley wasn't started by Apple or Facebook or one of these newcomers. Of course Apple's been around for a while, but it was started by Bill and Dave in their garage, and that's kind of where it all started. And then now Silicon Valley, there's depends on how you define it, but let's say 3.5 million or 7 million if you do a bigger circle. But it's not like a massive kind of number of people, but of course there's gravity. So Silicon Valley attracts a lot of talent, and because of that you will continue to see amazing success stories, unicorns, decacorns, you name it, they will come out of there. And then you have to enable that, you have Stanford, you have Berkeley, you have fantastic universities, and the talent coming there. Then they let's say Sergey Brin, Larry Page, they met at Stanford, and they created this little thing called Google. And I think that this is also kind of the norm, that the majority of the founders of these success stories weren't born in Silicon Valley. Actually, I think it's 59%, or there's some percentage were born somewhere else, but they came to Silicon Valley to basically make their dream happen.
Exactly.
And I think that this is we have the opportunity to do the same. And again, I use the games ecosystem. There's gravity. If you want to create the next big game, you come here. And we of course want to do the same now for all of kind of innovation, all of technology, and I think that this is actually what I've been working on since the HP Bazaar we did in 1999 when I was at HP, and that was all about attracting the startups that were creating all these cool new services for mobile. And back then, I mean, this was before smartphones and all of that. Yep. Ringtones used to be a big thing, and one of the companies we actually worked with then when I was at HP was a company called Yomi Media, and they were started in Jyväskylä, and they created the first ringtone services for Radiolinja, which was the first GSM operator on the planet. And then ringtones became like a multi-billion industry, and it started also kind of pretty modest beginnings. Vesku Paananen, nowadays he's with Microsoft, but him and his friends started this Yomi Media, and then they did ringtones and a lot of cool services, and that was kind of early days of the mobile ecosystem here. But anyway, so we created this HP Bazaar to make it easy for startups to work with this big dinosaur, HP. And HP, of course, big corporation, we had access to the key players, the mobile operators, the Nokias, the Ericssons, the Motorolas, those guys of the world. So we created gravity. We attracted all of these startups to work with us, and then we took them to the world. And right now, kind of executing on the same kind of strategy, that creating the gravity for the finest Bay Area. So also we created Slush in 2008, and that was actually because in 2007 I gave a talk to 600 Aalto University students about entrepreneurship and startups, and for many of them it was the first time they even heard the word entrepreneurship, or they even heard about startups, which now sounds funny that, hey, how could that be, under which rock had they been living? But they were actually living under the rock called Finland, where like in our universities, the kind of like dream was that okay, I will land a job at Nokia or Kone or Wärtsilä or Finnair or like the government, go work for a big company, and that's like what you want to do. So I think now the world is very different, and we started actually Slush, which is now the biggest and best startup event on the planet. The whole idea was that we needed to change the attitude. So when I asked actually the 600 students back then in 2007 that, okay, how many of you guys want to start a company? Only 3 raised their hand. And actually, out of those 3 students, 2 were international students. So again, like my point there, that most of the founders, if you take Silicon Valley, are not from there. And it's also a situation that we'll end up with here in Finland, that most of the founders of these success stories will be people who came here for high school, for university, then they start, the next Rovio and Angry Birds, the next Supercell, the next like big thing, the next Google, the next Facebook. And so for me, all of these things are about creating this enabling, let's say, ecosystem, enabling this success of others. So I think this is a very important theme for me in everything I do. And with Slush we managed to change the mindset and the attitude. So nowadays, when I in 2007 asked, okay, how many want to start a company? 3 hands out of 600. But now, if you do the same any university in Finland, more than half the hands will go up. But it's also the same in high school. And I've been now to many high schools. So we have this Finest Future high school program, and I every time ask the same question: how many of you guys want to start a company? And it's actually more than half raise their hand every time. So super happy to see this amazing change and transformation that has happened in just like a few years when you can start thinking about it. So yeah, it's all related, basically.
I think that's beautiful. That's kind of like this red line going through the whole story. And I'm one of those. So when I started at university, we had our first business lab was just built. So the incubator at the Hanke School of Economics. And I went downstairs, and then you see like this energetic group of people, and everyone is talking that Slush is coming up soon, and it's so cool.
Change the world. So
but then you get hooked, and I became an entrepreneur because of that, and because of that wave that was ongoing at the moment. So thank you, Peter.
Sure.
But I think the big picture here is kind of like that we're missing a bit of the gravity still here in the area. Totally. And because we're missing the gravity, we also have something called a huge talent shortage.
Yes.
What do you think the main reasons added to the kind of like missing gravity is that why don't we have enough talent even though we have the happiest and best place on the earth to be at?
I think that we haven't had to kind of like do too much about it. So I think that again there's been kind of like the population, okay, it's not been growing, but I mean it's still been growing a little bit, and it hasn't been declining kind of like until now. But of course we have been struggling with kind of like aging population and not like a growing workforce. And I think that but it's kind of like we managed so far. But now I think that it's really starting to sink in that and now that we're kind of like moving to this kind of like hopefully post-pandemic world, we are starting to see a lot of shortage of everything, but also kind of like the talent. And that's like wherever I go, no matter how small the town or city, you ask the mayor about the biggest challenge, and they will all tell you that we can't find the people. I mean, we have companies growing here, but they can't find the talent, and so it's becoming kind of like a bit of a like urgent thing to sort out. But it also takes time, and I think that people are starting to wake up, and now we're kind of like getting there. But the problem is that of course if you then look at we should have more Finnish people born and give more births. But even if we would start doing that now, it takes 20 some years before you can like go through the whole education, all that. That's just how it works. So it's even if we decide to do something about it today, if we go through kind of like the whole process, it takes 20 years. So
it's expensive, the 20 years,
and
right?
it's also expensive. I mean, it takes time and it costs money and like all of that. So I think that we have an opportunity to attract talent here. So again, what we can offer a safe environment. We can offer an environment that is again known for being the happiest nation on the planet. I mean, 4 years running, Finland has been ranked number 1 by the UN in that kind of like category. And then if you look at also kind of like our neighbors, so all the Nordic countries are always very, very high up in that. If we're not all like in the top 5, we're all in the top 10. Yeah. And I think that this is also like about the Nordic countries that we've gotten some things right, and that's something that we should be very proud of that. But of course, we can never be happy about it. So I think that it's something that, or let's say, content maybe is that we need to really make sure that we keep moving forward and make things better. And I think part of making things better is also that we then attract the talent from the rest of the world. We attract the talent early. We can offer fantastic high school education. This is something that I think it's a great way to come here, basically figure out the society, the Finnish way of life, the Nordic way of life. So I think this is something that we should focus on. And we have places like take Vietnam, take Uzbekistan, take Brazil, Iran, many countries where you have a very rapidly growing population. You have a very young population. So you could say that their kind of like population pyramid is kind of like really a pyramid and not an upside down one that we have. So I think that there is a great synergy if we work with these emerging markets, emerging economies. So come here, we'll give you the best education on the planet. You can stay here if you want, or you can go back and build your own country. And I think that some people will stay, some will go back. So it's a win-win. So Finland wins, the finest Bay Area wins, and the originating country wins. So I think this is something that we need to do. And it's of course a bit longer term play. But if you have then young people who arrive here for high school when they're 16, okay, we just saved 16 years and we saved a lot of money. If you want to like pitch this to the taxpayers that, hey, you basically saved time and you saved, the cost of, giving birth, the basic education of 16 years. I mean, that's like a lot of money. Exactly. And then we can offer these young people fantastic education. We can offer them a happy life. And I think this is something that, if you ask any parent, what do you want for your kid? Of course, you want happiness. You want a happy life.
Exactly.
And then, so I think that we have a fantastic opportunity here, and we have really a situation where I really see that it's kind of like a win-win. Of course, I mean, there's always, then you can look at it many different ways, but I think that we need to have a dialogue about that. We need to really engage the whole population here in the Nordic countries. We can also learn from some kind of like less successful models when it comes to immigration. And again, I don't see any reason why we couldn't be kind of like best in the world on this talent attraction and creating the gravity, attracting people here, young people, startup founders, already, like talent that are a bit further in their career. I think that we can offer a fantastic environment.
Yeah. I think it's an amazing project in many ways or amazing topic because it kind of like solves problems on every aspect that you look at. So we've been working a lot on Africa things with you, Peter.
Exactly,
and if you look at there, for example, what is the biggest problem there? It's kind of like the other way around. So there is not enough of opportunities.
Exactly.
And here we have not enough of doers for all the opportunities, which is like, why shouldn't we matchmake that?
Exactly. And and I think that this is also, I mean, I always talk about, the 3 E's and this kind of like triple E model, but I think that it really all starts with the education. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is super important. And I think that if you look at Africa, I mean, it's a great example that there is definitely a shortage of, education. So we need to make education better, again, by working with the local people, the local governments, local universities, schools, everything. And it's kind of like a massive challenge because there are a lot of schools and not enough teachers, so we need to train more teachers. We need to kind of like work on that, and I think that that's something that we know a thing or two about over here, based on our kind of like history and how we kind of like evolved our educational system. But then I always say that, you know, like, who cares if you have the best education on the planet if you're not doing anything with that education? And that's kind of like where this entrepreneurial mindset and, you know, entrepreneurship comes in. And entrepreneurship, to me, I mean, it's a big word, kind of like, but it's just like really about doing things. And entrepreneurs are people who do. And you see a problem, you see an opportunity, go out there, do. And this is something that we can also work together on between, you know, Africa or like any emerging market. I think this is an area where we can do a lot. And then always throw in like entertainment, and there's a lot of reasons why that is important, because hey, it should be fun. I mean, we are always competing for people's time and attention. So again, we need to be as good as the best games companies or like entertainment companies, that we need to execute at that level, and that's something that is very important. But yeah, I think that you know, Africa is always something that you know, a lot of people still have this kind of like totally wrong picture that it's all about, you know, like people in little villages in the rural areas starving. And, you know, and of course there is that to Africa, but that's a very stereotypical perspective. I mean, there's cities, you know, buzzing with, you know, activity, and there are like people who are like, you know, hustling and creating new things, and you know, like there's entrepreneurship like on the ground there. But I think that there we can again work together and make that kind of like the mainstream, and kind of like make big cool. Like change happen. Yeah.
I like that a lot, and like it opened my eyes also really a lot to all of these different issues we also have here in our own backyard when we're like working with the world.
Yeah.
But what I think is really cool is that we have a really clear opportunity here, and we have the space, and we have the space in the schools and all of this. But
totally. Yeah.
If everything makes this much sense, why isn't it happening on scale? What are the kind of like biggest challenges there?
I think that it's also like a little bit about like gaps in our own education, and I think that it's a little bit like that before, you know, these kind of like you know, PISA studies, you know, analyzing the educational systems around the planet, before they starting doing that. Here in Finland, we had like no idea that hey, our schools are actually pretty good, and actually our schools are not only like pretty good, they're like best on the planet. And it came as a bit of a surprise to everybody here in Finland that what, you know, like okay, so our schools are like really this good, and I think that it's for me, I mean, in like non-pandemic times, I'm typically traveling more than half the time, and you know, go to China twice a month, and like all over Asia. You know, Vietnam, I mentioned Uzbekistan, you know, not kind of like your normal like travel destination. Been to the US during my HP times, typically, you know, like at least once a month, and you know, and then when you see other nations, and you see other schools, other universities, other companies, and then you can like start understanding, I think, the big picture, that there are many ways of doing things, and there's no kind of like right or wrong way, but there's definitely better and worse ways of doing things. And I think that to really appreciate then what we have here in Finland, in, you know, the finest Bay Area, look at Finland, you look at Estonia, you look at, you know, like all of Nordic countries, then you start realizing that hey, we're like pretty damn good at this, and why don't we share this? But if you haven't seen kind of like the world, and if you haven't seen these other places, then you don't necessarily understand why our schools are better. So it's again you need to kind of like have something to compare with, and I think this is something that is missing, especially kind of like if you look at, you know, like the educational system. Of course, it's mainly public, and I think on the public side there is a big gap in the understanding, that you don't really always understand why our system works and why it delivers better results than some of the others. And I think that this is something that just needs kind of like again education and needs like more understanding. Exactly. And also actually what is very interesting example. So if you look at Estonia, and I'm a huge fan of what they have been doing, like since they regained their independence in the early 90s. So they were under like this Soviet oppression for many years, and they actually really did a fantastic job on transforming the whole society. But we actually work together with Estonia. So take a thing that is like very central to educational system, teachers. So it was actually Finnish people working together with, for example, Tartu University and the kind of like educators in Estonia. In the early 90s, we defined the model for educating teachers in Estonia. We took a lot of things from Finland. There was actually Kari Niinistö and his team. So Kari spent 2 years in Tartu working with Jaak Aaviksoo, who is now also like doing actually this strategy paper for the like this finest Bay Area. So what Finland and Estonia should do together. So he's working together with Anne-Mari Virolainen, so our former Minister of Foreign Trade and Development and Member of Parliament. So they are actually creating this paper for way forward for Finland and Estonia and like the finest Bay Area. And Jaak was actually the director of Tartu University when then Kari Niinistö was there, and Kari has been like in University of Turku under like with the teacher education, and then they defined the model for Estonia. And now Estonia is, you could even argue that in some areas they already passed Finland in kind of like the educational system. But it's maybe the point that I want to make there is that that happened because we work together. Exactly. So we have a long history of doing that. And then maybe another point there that it didn't happen overnight. So it's not that, okay, yesterday the Estonian education minister woke up and okay, tomorrow I will have like the best educational system on the planet. That's not kind of like, you can't do that. So you need to have a plan, and then you have to have patience. So when we talk about these kind of like big transformational efforts, then it will take 10, 20 years before you really start to see that, hey, because of what was done in the early 90s, and of course it's not just like one thing, it's many things that were done. But I think that some of these activities that were done by like Kari and Jaak was then the education minister and stuff like that. Because of some of the activities done by those people, now Estonia has a fantastic educational system. And I think that it didn't happen overnight, and it took a few key people to kind of like then make it happen. And now Estonia is kind of like reaping the benefit of like what was done long time ago. So you just have to kind of like plant the seeds, and then cultivate and then have the patience that hey, it's not going to be ready tomorrow or even like next year, but it might take until the 2035 or whatever.
Exactly. For those of our listeners who don't know where Estonia lies, it's just a bit south from Finland. I don't know, is it like 70 or 100 kilometers overseas?
I think it's like 70, 80. At shortest, I think it's like 60 kilometers from Finnish coast to Estonian coast. But Helsinki and Tallinn are the capital cities, and they are actually probably, if you look at the global picture, they are some of the capital cities that are in the closest proximity of each other. So Helsinki and Tallinn really are almost the same. And actually we're building a tunnel now to connect the two cities. So we will create one unified metropolitan area for Helsinki and Tallinn. So now it's 2 hours by ferry. But in the not too distant future, the travel time will be reduced to 20 minutes, airport to airport. And I think that then we can really talk about, like this kind of like twin city, and we can talk about this twin capital region with over 2 million people. And it's really like one unified metropolitan area. And I think that this is also will really create a lot of opportunity and a lot of growth, and it will create gravity. So a lot of people will come to the Helsinki-Tallinn like metropolitan area, and that's actually why we talk about this finest Bay Area, because that's what it is. And it's actually kind of like as a side note that there are of course many Bay Areas. I mean, we have the San Francisco Bay Area, which Silicon Valley, and you have the Seattle Bay Area, home of Amazon and Microsoft, and like many successful companies. And then Greater Bay Area in China, so that is where all of our phones and all the electronics, Shenzhen, but also Guangzhou, Hong Kong, Macau. So that Greater Bay Area, which also very impressive, Tokyo Bay Area, and there's a lot of Bay Areas. So there's clearly something with Bay Areas. But I always say that there's a lot of Bay Areas, but there's only one finest Bay Area. And the finest Bay Area, of course, it's based on facts. So we take Finn out of Finland, we take Est out of Estonia, and we end up with finest. Nice. And I think that that's kind of like also kind of like a guiding light here, that moving towards that that we'll have by far kind of like the highest talent density of anywhere on the planet here, like we already have in games. And I think that we have an opportunity to kind of like build on then the success of Slush, and build on top of the success of the startup ecosystem. And I mean, Estonia again, amazing place. They have 7 unicorn companies.
That's crazy.
And I mean, and 1.3 million people. So it's nobody comes close to that. Not even our friends in Stockholm. So number of unicorns per capita is just like second to none, and that's something that again didn't happen kind of like by accident. And there were like of course some good developments again early on. Skype, and Skype had actually 2 very successful exits, and then means that people ended up with some capital, and that's been kind of like reinvested. And because of that, not only have Skype, actually Skype wasn't the first unicorn, it was like Playtech and then Skype. You have Bolt and Pipedrive and TransferWise or Wise nowadays, and there's and Wise was actually the first decacorn for Estonia. So super impressive track record. So it means that if you compare Estonia to say China, I was in Beijing before the pandemic, and there was a professor from Tsinghua University who was super proud and super happy that hey, 200 plus unicorns in China. But if we do the math, it means that you need 7 million people in China to create one unicorn, and in Estonia it's less than 200,000. So amazing. I mean, like that's really crazy when you think about it. That's like a very high number of unicorns per capita, and nobody else has done that.
It's fun, Peter. Just listening to you when you continue. It's kind of like you're reading my mind. What is going to be the next question? And you're always able to answer that, which is good. But I also will be writing my master's thesis right now about why the new Nordic region has most unicorn companies per capita. And we'll actually have my interview with you probably next week. But
cool.
If you would summarize it in maybe like 2 or 3 points, why do we have, in your opinion, most of these unicorn companies?
Yeah, so I think that there's you can't say that it's like because of this one reason. So it's I mean, I got the same question that hey, like how did you guys make Angry Birds, the fastest growing consumer brand ever, and like all of that. It wasn't like one thing. You need to get many things right, and on top of that, you need a bit of luck. So you could say that you need to get everything right, and you need to be lucky. But I think that if you look at then the number of unicorns. It's the same thing there, that it doesn't work that way, that okay, one day the prime minister or president wakes up and okay, I want to have more unicorns than anybody else. That's like not how it works. But I think that it's one thing, like very important thing. So I mentioned like Tartu, for example, and Tartu University. It happens to be one of the oldest universities in our part of the world. Cool. And so it just means that we have had universities here for a while, we had many of the like Swedish universities back in the day when Sweden used to be part of Finland. We had many of the Swedish-speaking universities here as well. And then if you look at then the university side, we have the highest density of universities here in the Nordic countries. Again, if you look at it like per capita. And I think that again, the same thing like with the Silicon Valley example, you have Stanford. And actually like HP and Bill and Dave, they had their first building. It was actually built on Stanford University land, and Bill and Dave actually came out of Stanford and all of that. And like Sergey and Larry later with Google. So I mean, there's that kind of track record. So I think universities and of course universities are places where you have talent. So again, the talent density that I'm talking about. Of course, universities attract talent, and you get very high talent density. And then when you throw in entrepreneurship into that equation, then yes, you end up with a lot of companies, a lot of successful companies, because they basically have the background and the academic backing or experience. So you have that. And I think that the university side, again, it's about education. So that's really the foundation. Then you also need to, of course, build an environment where it's safe to do things, and also you have to get rid of things like corruption. So you can't have a situation like in our one of our neighboring countries, not to name any names. You might wake up after creating a successful startup or a unicorn, and then somebody else owns it because they happen to be friends of the regime. So I think that so you need to have an environment where you have rule of law and you have functioning societies, and I think this is something that is very important. And also then of course you need to have then the entrepreneurial mindset, and this was one thing that I think that we could do better. I mean, our friends in Estonia have the hunger and the will to make stuff happen, and sometimes we have a bit of a problem here in Finland and Nordic countries that because of our let's say fairly developed societies, and they're fairly mature, that then we don't always have that kind of hunger and that drive and that passion to create new companies and create new things. So that's you need to be a bit careful with that. But anyway, I think that education, functioning societies, get rid of the corruption side. That's something that we've been doing very well. And if you look at the list of least corrupt nations, typically the Nordic countries are also on top. And that's one area where Estonia has done also really good compared to many of the other countries that were under the Soviet oppression for many years. Estonia has really stands out, and they got that sorted. But yeah, so I would say that it's a combination of many things, and that's also now when other nations want to be like the Nordics. I think that then it's not that okay, let's be a Nordic country. It doesn't work like that. But I think that Estonia, again, I encourage many of these aspiring Nordic countries that hey, be Estonia. I mean, look at Estonia and learn from what Estonia did.
Exactly.
And that's a fantastic success story. So yeah, it's there's no simple answer that do this one thing and then you'll be fine. It's do all of these things and then hope that you'll be a bit lucky as well, and then you will end up with the unicorns and everything.
Exactly. So it's a model that has developed during the long time again, that nothing happens overnight.
Yeah, and I think that we've been always open to outside influences. So I think that it's also very important that you don't become arrogant. That I mean, there are many ways of doing things, and we should always learn to do things better. And we could go to, I don't know, hang out in the streets of Nairobi and observe and say, wow, these guys, they're, and then actually if you look at the payments in Africa, I mean, they didn't have very developed financial infrastructure with banks and everything, but then still you needed to transfer money and you need to pay for things and all that, so they created the M-Pesa thing there, and now that's kind of the norm, and you have mobile payments, and in many ways you could say that Africa is way ahead of Europe when it comes to that.
Yeah, cashless society.
Yeah, exactly. So again, important to keep an open mind, and I think that you can learn from from others, no matter where they are. It could be like the streets of Nairobi, or maybe you go to, I don't know, Lagos, or you go to Harare in Zimbabwe, and you learn about like how to grow roses, or whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to summarize here in the end a bit, so there is a real proof on that we have a huge talent gap or
yes.
A need of talent here, and what you've been doing there last years is this Finest Bay area, so it's more about than just a tunnel that people are talking about the news. It's about creating actually gravity here and turning this into the finest or most beautiful Bay Area of them all.
Yeah.
And then also all of this, what has been going on, has led kind of like to a epic amount of unicorn companies and a lot of growth, and if we would have more people, probably we would see more of those companies as well. And here in the end, Peter, what do you, how would you say to our listeners, how can they follow the easiest of all these different things happening here, or how could they join the movement of getting more talent to join?
Yeah, so I think that of course, we're all over like social media, and pretty active on places like Twitter, so you can always follow me personally there. But then we have a lot of let's say online presence, so you can go to like finestbayarea.online, or you can go to finestfuture.org, or you can go to many of these edunation.co. So a lot of different companies and different entities working on this, and I think that's also always been kind of like very much my way of doing things, that I think that it's important to enable the success of others. So again, and also like then when you want to get something done, okay, then if there's nobody doing it, then start a company and then let's go after this and make it happen. So I think that and maybe there that it's again no reason to kind of like wait. I mean, there's always stuff that you can do like every day, and I think that's also kind of like the entrepreneurial kind of like approach, that okay, hey, I see an opportunity here now to do this, so then just like go out there and kind of like make it happen, and then you can always ask people for their like input and support and help and everything. And I think also like my experience is that once you kind of like start doing things, it will lead to kind of like doing more things, and there's like always like the next opportunity, and then that actually helps you make what you are working on true. So it's I think that it kind of like boils down to kind of like doing things. So I say that many times a day, that how difficult can it be? Let's just like get it done, and let's just like do. And I think that maybe that's also the advice that I would have, that just let's go out there and do things, and do things together. I think this is also one thing that is very important. That we can't do things alone, and it's important to kind of like then get other people on board and work with the talent, no matter where they happen to be. They could be in Africa or in Asia, or in China, Vietnam, the US, wherever. So I think that's again, it's a very global world, and I think that we need to kind of like get rid of the kind of like the borders and the limitations that are typically in our mind mostly. So that's kind of like maybe the most important thing.
Yeah, and I think you can meet both me and Peter at Slush, for example, if you're coming. It's happening in a couple of months.
Yeah.
And we're happy to meet and discuss anything there.
Yeah.
And maybe the last thing to bring here, what we've been doing here with the Norders, I was actually thinking about this triple E model you were mentioning. Kind of like education, it's done. It's kind of good. Entrepreneurship, Slush, all of the things that you did, it's done. And the next kind of like step we have as a nation is also kind of like the entertainment, how to kind of like tell about us to the world. And I think this is also what we've been doing a lot with Norders, and removing the borders and all of the different things. So it's something I can't wait to do even more on scale and see how we get.
That's always like with the no borders, it's like no borders, Norders. So you can like start to do like some really cool stuff there, playing words. So that's like pretty cool. But I think that that's like a very good idea. So if you look at Slush is coming up, and like everybody, actually this year not everybody will be there because of the pandemic and we have to limit things. But I think that I mean definitely you should come to Slush, and we'll both be there. So we could catch up with people at Slush. And and then if not at Slush, then like see you online kind of thing. So,
that's the best. And it's easy to reach us.
Yeah.
Peter, thank you so much for being back here at the Nordic show. I had the first episode actually with you and Jolene, but I always wanted to have one with you to actually chat what is going on here. So I think we got that covered pretty well here.
It's good. Very good.
Do you have anything you want to say in the end? Some short intro?
I guess that we'll just continue on this at see you at Slush.
And do stuff, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Peter.
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Have a great rest of the autumn.
Yeah, you too.
Awesome.